Evening all, welcome to Warriors of Attraction. I'm Adam, of course, back for another installment. And today we're welcoming someone from Australia who has been on several times, Alan Stevens, who's an international profile and communication specialist. So prepare Andrea or any others, he's probably going to read you, like he's read me as well. So he's probably reading me right now, I don't know. But I'm going to bring on Andrea right now. So here we go. Hello.
Hey, everybody.
How are
Hey,
you?
how y'all doing? I'm good. I want to say thanks to the Warrior family and everybody out there who reached out to me, when I was going through my little struggle and needed some time. And I appreciate all of y'all. I'm back. I'm ready. I got to learn more so that I can do more. And our subject matter, what we're going to talk about today, how we hurt ourselves. Woo! Yes, I'm so excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad you're back because we can get knocked down, but it's just a matter of getting back up again. That's all.
Well, I'm
That's all.
glad that we are up and here we are. So let's do this.
Absolutely. So yeah, people, please share this because we are going to dive right into how people are creating problems for themselves. Now, I know I'm guilty of it. I'm always creating problems for myself, but I know why. But I want to hear it from. Do I say the expert? I don't know. But either way, let's bring him on. How's that?
Come on. Bring him on.
Good morning, Alan.
Good morning. How are you both doing?
Oh, I am fine. How are you?
Pretty good.
That's good. That's good. You all right there, Andrea?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm so excited for this conversation and topic that we're covering today because I know I'm guilty of it too, brother. Yes, I am.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, obviously, when we was talking, Alan, about bringing you on, obviously we was discussing for God knows how long about the title of the topic and you came up with how we're creating problems for ourselves. So I want to know what inspired you to come up with that.
Well, I see it every day. As you know, and you can see my title there, I actually run the Campfire Project as well, which is a safe place for men and also women to be able to come and tell their stories and join in panel discussions. And we've had all genders, all cultures, all religions, and it's all been about respect. We've had no bigotry, sexism, or racism in over 600 hours of conversations. But in that, I realised that in those conversations, people have really opened up and they've solved problems in their lives. And I realised that they weren't communicating before. And that's where the biggest problem is. When we don't communicate or we use poor communication, then we actually create problems for ourselves. And it's only when we get together and we actually share and talk to other people that things then change for us.
Absolutely, and straight away when you was saying that, and when I was constantly repeating the title and the topic in my head, I'm thinking trauma. Straight away, trauma. But there's a difference, though, isn't there, between actual creating problems for themselves and the trauma being exposed to some sort of situation.
Yeah, well, the trauma comes second. The way I look at it, we create the problem and everything else, and then we look at it and we go, well, how do we get out of this problem? And that then starts to create trauma. And we're talking about trauma covers a whole range of areas. There's physical trauma from injuries and things like that. But where we're looking at the damage that we do to ourselves is the fact that we don't talk to other people. We hide things in. And depending on our personalities, just how much do we hold that inside and not let it out? And then while it's inside, we build it up and we create a monster. and then we think the world's against us and everything else. And because we lock ourselves down, the end result is we find it very difficult to open up to other people. And sometimes it takes a trauma to get us to start to communicate. So,
yeah, absolutely. Especially with men.
Oh, definitely, especially with older men as well, because we grew up with, boys don't cry. You suck it up, you be tough. You don't share your problems. I was told when I was younger that I used to wear my life on my sleeves. Well, I learned very quickly how to lock that down to a point that as I went through the later part of my life, several decades after that, for that period of time, nobody knew anything that was going on. If they saw something on my face, they would see that little bit, but what they didn't see was that mountain underneath it. It was less than the tip of the iceberg type thing. And we got trained very well. And men we're very good at learning lessons. And when you've been told that all your life, told that you may not, you don't matter, that you will never achieve and everything else, we lock that down and we build that up instead of communicating with somebody to find where the real truth is. And we have a habit of listening to people and responding. If they give something negative, we'll take that on and we'll let it fester inside of us. 20 people can tell us that we're great, and all we need is one person to tell us that we're not. And who do you reckon we listen to? That one person.
That one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the only reason we do that is because we've been educated to do that. That was the way we grew up. So as you say, men do it all the time. Yeah. I'm going to behave today, Adam. I know you're worried about me going, well, here we go, because I do get on my high horse about things because...
No, but it's true, though.
Yeah, I look at how much I actually self-sabotage myself. And so when I talk about systems and other things around us at the moment, I'm also reflecting back on how I let them control me as well. And so, so I can get on my high horse at times. But...
Anything to say, Andrea?
All I have to say is I can relate to what you're talking about when it comes to speaking about men from the perspective of being a Black woman in America, because, they see us as resilient. We're the strong ones. We're the ones that stands with everybody. And, we're always presenting as, the strength, undying strength. And, you could take that on and that could be so poisonous, so I can see it from the perspective of culture of being a Black woman and not being a male per se. Although my grandfather, he was in the Air Force and, we were a close knit family, but I never saw him cry, until my grandmother passed. And that's the first time my whole life that I ever saw him cry. You know what I'm saying? So I was kind of feeling like I had to be strong too, and that can be a burden, so I can see it from that perspective.
So that's another area. We take on typecasting as well. We look at it and we go, okay, well, we're supposed to be this way for other people. And that puts extra pressure on ourselves, and that's a self-sabotage as well. The strongest people need more people around them, but otherwise they just burden themselves down far too much. With the Campfire Project, I've got hundreds of people around me that are very close. We've got over 2,000 people in the group, but but I guarantee that if I put something out on Facebook, I'll get genuine comments from several hundred people very quickly. Whereas before, when I grew up and I was always trying to be tough and always being resilient, my first wife left and I had 3 boys to raise on my own. They were 4, 11 and 12 at the time. So I had to be strong. I also had been organising my own redundancy I was with our national telephone carrier at the time, working in the computer section, left them after 23 years to start my own business. So I was starting my own business, divorced and raising 3 boys. And everyone saw me as very strong. But half the time when I wasn't out there pushing myself really hard, I just wanted to go and sit in the corner and suck my thumbs. And But we won't. And the thing is, I find it very easy to talk about my past and open up and talk about how it affected me and everything else and what I felt at the time, simply because it no longer controls me, and it gives me the opportunity to share that with other men so that they don't go through the same rubbish that I went through. I'm thankful that the younger generation are more open.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Mhm.
and speaking of causing problems, my cats are fighting in the kitchen. I can hear them. So there you go. But that's probably just dominance. That's probably just dominance. I don't know. But
You got a good microphone because it's not coming through at this end. I can't hear them.
I don't hear it.
well, I'm
I don't
using my
hear 'em.
phone, not the laptop, so that's good. So, but listening to both of you, I can reflect on both your views because we grew up hearing the phrase "the boy that cried wolf,"
Mhm.
and I'm seeing that reflecting into our lives a lot. And it's like it's one of them statements that just sticks with you, and it's how to deal with that because we're always crying out, but it's
Mhm.
how do people notice it?
Well, if you look at, I'm always looking at Facebook, and I realise that a lot of the comments, the arguments that get started so easily, somebody puts something up on Facebook, and then people will take sides immediately.
Oh yeah,
We've got three types of empathy. We've got cognitive. This is the pain, the ability to be able to see someone's in pain. Everybody needs that to start with. Even torturers need it, because if they didn't have that ability to see the cognitive pain, they realize they couldn't realize that they're getting their jollies. They hurt somebody, they can see it, they're happy in what they do. The next level is emotional empathy. And what we end up doing with emotional empathy is we buy into the other person's pain. We can feel it. But cognitive is where we come in and we try and fix it. So it's a stage of going through. We've got to get to the cognitive, but we've got to transition very carefully between the emotional empathy and the cognitive empathy, because women are extremely good at the emotional empathy, but men are very good at the cognitive. We like to fix problems, but we usually don't talk to each other the right way to do that transition. If a woman's got complaining about something, the man will rush in straight away and try and fix it. And half the time, the woman doesn't want to fix. She just wants to be left alone. She just wants to be able to voice it because she needs to get it out.
yeah.
And here's the guy trying to fix it, not realizing that trying to fix it is holding it in, making her hold it in. And that causes a rift between the two. And so, but on the emotional empathy, because people aren't dealing with the stuff they've already gone through, they've pushed it down so much that now they respond to something that really, if they stopped and thought about it, it's a silly argument, but they're not dealing with the previous stuff. And that adds to the pain that we've got. So now we've got this emotional stuff going on. We've got all this thoughts going on, and we're making the story up in our heads half the time. It doesn't exist. And one of the things that I hate is people who use emails to have discussions. I was on Facebook one day, and I had a comment I'd put up on somebody's post, and this guy put a comment on mine, and I went, I think this guy's talking about the same thing as me, but he doesn't think that I am.
I remember you telling me about that, yeah.
So I responded back just to see, and he fired up. So I just sent him a message on Messenger and said, hey, I'm not going to argue with you on the open platform. Why don't you and I have a chat? I said, because I think you and I are really talking about the same thing. So let's have a chat and solve that. Just work it out and see if it's a case. We ended up, we had that conversation. I'm in north of Sydney in Australia. He's in Adelaide in South Australia. And we started chatting, and we realised we were on the same page. We just didn't understand the words that each of us were using. So then as we talked, and we said, he said, well, why did you call me? I said, because I could see this going south really fast and having really no bearing on anything. We're arguing about something that doesn't exist. Well, the end result is we're talking. He said, well, tell me your background. I told him. And next thing you know, he's asking me to profile his children. And then this was in 2016. And Disney and Gillette had hired me to go to London to Pinewood Studios for their Star Wars Rogue One launch. And he was chasing me while I was over there to do my master program. So that became a very economical and profitable situation for me, because I decided I didn't want to argue with him, but he became one of my clients and one of my strongest advocates. So, and this is the opportunity that people miss all the time. They jump in, respond, and because their emotions get triggered, they then get caught up in the whole moment. I always say, stop and think about what's the other person saying and where is it coming from? Why are they saying it? Because people will say when they point, when somebody's upset and everything else and carrying on, they've got a problem. There's the old saying, there's one finger pointing. When you're pointing your finger like that, there's three fingers pointing back at where the problem is. I did have a friend of mine, he'd lost this, the ring finger on one hand. So he said, oh, you can't, it's not three fingers pointing back on me. I said, yes, but I can read between the lines where the missing finger was.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing, because we don't look back. If we're feeling emotional, we look at the other person as being the problem, because if they're the problem, we can feel better about ourselves. This is why there's so many bullies out there. They've been bullied themselves and they therefore go on and bully others, because the only way they can feel better about themselves. So with bullies, I feel sorry for them. I don't get angry with them or anything else. I try and understand why they became that way. What was the situation? How can you deal with that? Then you go back another level until you finally get to the root cause. Where did it really start? And quite often it starts from somebody who had a misunderstanding with somebody else. And that festered because they didn't talk about it. They didn't deal with it. And that's where we create most of our problems, by not dealing with the thing that's there. If that means sitting down with somebody and having a conversation, you might end up in tears. Well, tears are good. They clear the tear ducts. They're good for the tears. Are good for the eyes. So one of the things I had to learn to do is learn how to cry. And when I was working with people who were going through a lot of stuff, and you could see them trying to hold the tears back, and then they'd finally start to cry and they'd be embarrassed. I'd go, you call that crying? That's pathetic. I'll show you how you can cry. And we ended up joking about it and laughing. And all of a sudden, they're letting stuff out again. Because the longer we hold things down, the more we give ourselves emotional traumas. That leads on to physical ones. Because every thought we have creates a chemical reaction in our body, and every negative thought creates a negative chemical, and those chemicals attack the different organs of our body. If you've got a lot of anger, I guarantee you're going to have liver problems at some point. If you've got a lot of resentment towards people, your kidneys are going to suffer. And so the more
I've only got one, so yeah.
So this is where I always say to people, if you want to be healthier about physically, let go of the stuff emotionally. And to say to somebody, look, let it go. Oh, God, that's virtually an insult. That's an arrogant statement to make. Unless you can say, right, need to let that go and then help them work through it, fine. But just tell somebody you got to let that go. You create a worse situation, because if that person's feeling really low and you're telling them you've got to let this go, and they feel like I can't let it go, they feel worse again. And why do people say they got to let it go? Because the person who's talking to them is feeling their emotional empathy, has got that emotional empathy happening, and doesn't want to feel it. Half the time we try and get other people to settle down and feel comfortable, it's about us. It's not about them. We've felt their pain, and therefore we go, I don't want to feel this anymore. So we've got to tell them they've got to let it go so that we can let it go. And that's why men, because we're extremely, this is where people make the mistake. Men are highly emotional, but we block it down and we don't let it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
we mask.
Yeah, we hide it. And in doing that, all we're doing is getting more of those chemicals going through our bodies, and the more we're damaging our physical and emotional state. So I never tell anybody, oh, you have to do this. I go, well, look, you start talking about, well, I can understand, I can feel your pain. And I haven't been through what you're going through. And I don't like the way I'm feeling. So I can really appreciate how you're feeling. That must be terrible. And, how can we help you to get out of that? So by recognizing it first, then I talk about, okay, let's see how we can solve that situation. Just going and jumping to the first part and saying, no, let's change that because you're doing this is wrong what you're doing. Well, if they're already feeling down and telling them they're wrong, just makes it worse.
Absolutely.
So support them in the moment, meet them where they're at, and support them right in the moment, as opposed to telling them what to do. Yes.
See, I won't argue with somebody if they're, in a bad temper and everything else. Yes, I will match them. I will never go, okay, it's okay, don't worry about it. God,
Right.
You deserve a punch in the mouth if you try and get someone to go quiet like that.
Right.
I see it on all the TV shows where the police are talking to someone. You got to be calm. You got to be calm. You got to be calm. The person's not going to be calm because you've told them by telling them you got to be calm that they have no right to be the way they are. You're telling them they have no right to feel the emotions they feel. I will match them at the same thing. I will show them that the way they're talking is making me angry as well, but then I change the tone of voice. And I go, okay, I can appreciate your feelings and everything else. Now let's have a look at how we can actually fix that. So I can see it, I can feel it. I know that has to be really tough, really hard, but what can we do to actually fix the problem? What can the people around you do? If they're, it doesn't matter. You can go up into a demonstration, and if you can find that way of connecting to the person who's doing all the yelling and carrying on, they soften very quickly. You dispel things by not putting coming up like that, but coming up beside them and talking to them. And as you talk to them, it's like if you're standing on one side and you're coming close physically next to somebody and you're slowly leaning against them or coming close, they will steer in the direction you want them to go. They will move away and you take them where you want to take them. When you're like this, they're trying to go this way and you're trying to go that way, and all you're doing is clashing. So think about that physical aspect. Take that into the conversations you have. When you talk to somebody, steer them in those directions, ask questions. They make a statement, then ask a question about that statement. So people say that if somebody's stressed and they're suicidal or whatever, I don't know how to talk to them. Well, you start by listening to them first of all. You empathize with what they're feeling. I can appreciate that. It must be terrible and everything else. But what's the course of action you could take? If somebody talks about a negative action, they go, well, how's that going to help you? Is that going to make things worse? What about the people around you, etc.? But do it in a way in which they don't feel guilty. But because you've got a father, for instance, he's got families, he's going through pressure and everything else, and you try and tell him that, hey, your family's going to suffer and all these other things and you're doing that to try and get him to change the direction he's going, but you put all this pressure on him because now he even feels more guilty and he's more likely to do it. But you can start talking about, well, what is it you want for your family? How do you want them to feel into the future? How do you want your children to grow up? And you talk about that side and you picture it. Well, tell me what you see for your children. This is what you want for them. Tell me what that would look like. You change a person's thoughts by not getting them to think about the thoughts they've got. If you feel thinking really bad, I don't like the way I'm thinking, I've got this anger and everything else, I go, well, how does that make you feel? It makes me feel pretty crappy. Rightio, I've got a starting point. That's the base, but I'm not going to spend any time there. If you're on a journey, from where you start, you want to get away from there quickly to get to where you want to go. So I've gone through the thoughts down to the crappy feelings. Okay, if that's the way you feel, how would you prefer to feel? Tell me about that. And then when you got them over at that point, well, describe what you'd be doing if you felt that way. Use all your senses, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. The person says, well, one of the things I love doing is walking. Well, where do you walk? Where do you love walking? Oh, along the beach. Well, tell me about that. You're barefoot, you're wearing shoes, you're in the soft sand, the hard sand, you're in the water. What can you smell? Can you smell the salt water? What are you hearing? The seagulls and things like that. And you get them in their emotions. Now you've got their senses in the emotions, and in those emotions, now they're creating new thoughts. So you haven't fixed the old thoughts by dealing with the old thoughts. What you've actually done is you completely replace them with complete new way of thinking. The only way to get back to those old thoughts is to go down to the good feelings, across to the bad feelings, to go back up to the old thoughts. And so you replace them. You don't change them.
He's good, isn't he?
So does that make sense?
Yes, I'm sitting here like, yes.
All right,
I
we've got a
some-
question. Obviously, we've had comments flooding through here, but we've got a question off Richard, who's autistic. What do you think of that? Can people thrive and develop coping via the pain and heal and thrive?
Well, as I said, with the taking of, if I understand that question right, if we just go back to the description I gave, we started with the old thoughts of the painful thoughts and the painful feelings. And we use that as the basis of where you've got to have a platform. You've got to have a starting point in everything. So if you've got the pain, you can then use that, because now we're looking, okay, if that's what I don't want, what is it that I do want? Because if you just said to somebody, hey, what do you want for the rest of your life?
Mm-hmm.
The brain will just start spinning its wheels. And in NLP, that's a question in relationship selling, sales and marketing. What we do is we ask the person that, what do you want for the rest of your life? They can't answer because it's too stressful a question. There's too much going on. But if you say, well, what in the next 6 weeks, if they're having problems with their partner, in the next 6 weeks, what would you like from your partner? To make the situation better, what could your partner do to do that? Or what can you do in the next 6 weeks? So now you narrow it down. But you've got to have, to change something, you've got to have a point of reference to start with.
Yeah, and that's what annoys me is, and I'm going to say, Andrea, I really am, is when we are actually in schools and these teachers are saying in assemblies or classroom, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Nobody knows.
No.
All we're doing is guessing.
So even
then, 9 times out of 10, what we picked then on that day, we're not that person.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we do that in business too. We, as you've just proven, we are great students at school because that's what we went through there. And then when you start a business, they're talking about a 5 and a 10-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
You have an idea where you want to go, but your plan is a daily one. It's more to the point that as things happen, we have to react to those in some way. We try and preempt things, but we deal with things as they come along without like being a negative reaction. But we have some tools that we can go, okay, the only thing that's constant in life is change. That's the only thing that is permanently constant. Change is always going to be there. So we need to learn to blend in with that, to go with the flow, not to be, react to it in a negative way to try and change it and change the change, which is not going to happen, but to go with it, know how to actually work with that. So when tough times come in, how can I then use that to actually move back and then steer it back to where I want to go? Because everything becomes a state of mind. What you believe will happen. If you believe you can't, you're right. If you believe you can, you're right.
Exactly.
Right.
And what was Andrea?
I just said, that's right. I agree with what he was saying.
Absolutely. Yeah, and obviously I want to take you back, Alan, because you mentioned NLP and change and all that. And I listened to a lot of motivational speeches from Les Brown, Eric Thomas, and basically I'm studying psychology at the minute. And because I want to be a psychologist. That's my goal. And when people are saying, where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that could actually trigger someone to have a mental breakdown because obviously if people are stuck in the past, then they're stuck in the adversity level, which then they're going to struggle to build that resilience. But
That's right.
if they're focusing too much in the future, obviously your goal's there, but there's a distance between there and where you are. And you have to take that one step at a time, not that leap of faith. And people need to realise, and obviously this is reverse psychology reflective practice, is focus on the here and now. What are you doing right now to get to that goal?
Yeah, so if you ask somebody, where are you going to be in 5 years? and or you ask them the different question, which is where would you like to be in 5 years? Completely different things. Where you would like to, this is where your imagination comes in. This is where you're able to go, oh yeah, I'd like to be able to do this, I'd like to be able to do that. Then the question comes after that, well, what is it you need to do today to take you in that direction? And so that makes something that you can do. But when you say where are you going to be in 5 years? Well, I'm going to be 5 years old, and that's the only thing that I know. And then again, I don't know if that's going to happen because I might get hit by a bus tomorrow. I'm not being.
Exactly. They have to be ready. They got to be ready for the change as well. It's like you said, it's one thing to say even what we would like, to be in the next 5 years. We can have that great intention of what we like and start looking into that process. And you know what? If we don't continue in that direction, something comes up and knocks us back. You know what I'm saying? How you gonna get there?
Yeah, and that's the
I
thing.
think we can thrive, though. I'm proof. We're all proof of that. I do believe.
It comes down to when people say that, well, it's okay. The question is, well, if that's where we'd like to be, what is it you need to do to get there? What's the next thing? What's the next step that you need? And so it's not
smart goals.
Yeah, because okay, I want to travel from say Sydney to Brisbane, which is about a 10, 12-hour trip, depending on how you drive and how many stops you have. And so straight away, I know I want to be there. What time do I need to be there by? Therefore, what time am I going to leave? What am I going to do on the way through? Because that will determine if I have a target to be there at a certain time, tomorrow or later today at that point, what time do I need to leave here? Well, I don't know what time I need to leave here until I've worked out what I want to do on the way to get there. Am I going to go? Which road am I going to take? When I take this coast road, I'm going to go out into the country and go up. Where will I going to stop? How long am I going to need to stop there? What's the traffic going to be like? And so I come back and I look at that. So the first step then when I do start that journey is go out my front door. So the first step is the main one I'm thinking of. Once I've sort of mapped out, got an idea of everything else, then I start to do that. I get in the car and I start to go. On that journey, I may have said, righty, I'm going to go from point A to point B, and point X is down where my destination is. But my first stop, I might go, okay, it's going to take me a certain amount of time. And then all of a sudden I get every red light on the way, or I get every green light. So that's going to change. The timing has already changed. So as you can see, change is always going to be there. Yeah. The question we should be asking people is, well, if that's what you want to be in the future, and there's a whole bunch of things can come up, what are you going to put in place so you can handle those changes? How are you going to
respond?
Yeah. How important is it? Is it set in concrete? You have to do that. If you have to do that, why? Because that will be something else. You ask somebody and they go, well, I might be talking to a young fellow and he says, oh, I want a red sports car, a convertible. And I go, well, why do you want the convertible? What's that all about? And after a while, you find out that it's about security. He's been told he's thought by having a red convertible will show his status, that he's showed everybody that he's achieved and everything else. But it may not even be about having the security. It could be that he needs to be recognised. And so we go and deal with that, and all of a sudden he doesn't need the red convertible anymore, because the red convertible wasn't the thing that he was really after. He was after this self-awareness, the feeling that he matters. Because going after the red convertible is just going to make more trauma for him, because he's trying to be somebody he's not, to please everybody. As they say, we go and we work really hard to make money, to buy things that we don't need, to impress other people. I always say, and quite often, we impress people that if we knew them, we wouldn't even like them. And so why do we do it? But if people are out there impressing other people, it's not about the other people. It's something in them that they're missing, that they haven't dealt with. Go back and deal with that, then you have a happier life.
Yeah, absolutely. They think buying that convertible gonna make them happy, and once they get it, it might bring so many more problems, or challenges, because it's that type of car, and it's gonna cost more to fix. You don't think of all that. You think, if I have it, it'll make me happy, and then once you get it, You're wondering why you're not happy.
Yeah, well, it may take you that long to get it, but now you're grey-haired and everything else, and everybody's making comments about, look at the old fool in the convertible trying to be a young fella. That then causes another problem because now you go, oh, what does everybody think of me? Well, if somebody's
Right.
worried about what other people think of them, then obviously there's stuff they don't feel good about in themselves. That's the area we need to go and fix it. As they say, you shouldn't need to worry about what other people think. However, we do. In business, we have to, because if they don't like us, they're not going to buy from us. If we want to have a business, we have to look at that side of it. But to put it to a level where that controls our life, our personal lives, then we've got a problem. There's 8 billion people on the planet. The only person I can be is me. And so by being me, the people who don't like me, they're going to go away. That's great, because now I don't have to live up to their expectations. I live up to mine. And then I think who I am will attract the people who like the type of person I am. This is why I'm not worried about having an expensive car or a convertible or anything else. I've driven into places with my little, well, back in those days, a little old Mazda, and all the other people I went in there to teach when I was doing classes with them. They're driving their big 4-wheel drives and everything else, and they're looking at my cars. And I look at them back, and I can see the looks on their face. I get them into a conversation. They're going, but you're doing all this stuff. Why you got that old car? Because the car doesn't impress me. It gets me from A to B. It's comfortable. The car I got at the moment, it's got cup holders. That was the main thing for me, was to have a car that had cup holders. Because driving with your coffee sitting between your legs can be dangerous at times. And so that's the thing. I just wanted a car that felt comfortable, get me from A to B. And the car I got at the moment, I get on a highway trip, 4.6 litres to 100 kilometres. It's very economical. So I'm saving money. By saving money, I can use that money for other things. I can use it for the charities, Business Smiles, and other things I'm involved with. So I know where my priorities are. When people look at it, I go, well, you've got an expensive car that drags a lot of, chews a lot of petrol, and you're doing that to impress other people. And I sit down and have a conversation with them about what's missing in their lives. They think because I have got the cheap old car that I'm missing something, where I'm not. They are, because they've got all this stuff to try and impress everybody else.
I appreciate the fact I don't have a car.
I don't have a car.
I could be sitting here freaking out. I don't have a car. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? You know what? I've been driving my 7 children around their whole lives for about 40 years. You know what? It's nice. So I can look at it. It's the way I respond. I can look at it now and appreciate the fact, guess what? I'm not paying for petrol. I'm not paying for insurance. You know what I'm saying right now? Like you said, that money can go into building some things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and somebody who catches the bus all the time and people look down their nose at them and say, oh, you're on the bus. But yeah, if I'm on the bus, I'm being chauffeur driven. So when you look at it that way, you go, hey, I'm so chauffeur driven. You've got to drive yourself. So who's better off here? And when I'm being chauffeur driven, I can read, I can do other things. I can look out the window and enjoy what I'm seeing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's me. Yeah, well, that's me, because obviously I have applied for a provisional in the past, but obviously they declined it. But at the time, I was quite peed off about it. But I came to realise I don't want to drive. I don't want to learn to drive, because, to be honest, when I walk into town or walk to the shops or whatever, half the time I walk back. Depends on what I've got, but I walk back. I don't care whether it is. I don't care. Because at the end of the day, that's me focusing on me, and that's me having me time, and that's me improving my own mental well-being.
That's right.
Exactly. And also, there was a saying out there: legs were born before wheels.
And by using your legs as well, you stay healthy. And while you're walking, exercise clears our mind as well. It's good for our emotions. We've got people who've got expensive cars who drive everywhere and then go to the gym and pay a lot of money to go and work out. And there's plenty of opportunities to do it elsewhere and to do it with other people and enjoy the size of everything else. So again, as you see, what we're getting to here is the for those people who think that way, that's fine. That's the way they like to do things. For me, I do it my way. I don't need to impress anybody else. That's what I finally got to in my life. Growing up, I was always told I'd never matter. I'd never make it. They'd never achieve anything. My mother's brother-in-law, my uncle, told her that, or actually told me that I would never amount to anything, and actually told my fiance at our engagement party that she could do better than me. Now, I spent all my life trying to match up to what other people expected of me. As I said, I went through later in life, I went through marriage and divorce, and I raised through my 3 boys on my own. When my uncle was sick in hospital, I went and saw him, and I took the 3 boys with me. By this stage, the older 2 were teenagers, and I think the youngest one was about 8 years old. And I went into the hospital, and we talked in that. And then I went out to get in the lift. He's got his drip connected to him. He's got it on the movable pole thing. He walked out with it, and I saw the expression on his face. He was extremely apologetic in his look. He was now amazed at what I was doing. Here I am divorced. I'm raising 3 boys. I'm running my own business and everything else. So what he thought of me when I was younger was totally wrong. But now, and at that point, I had total forgiveness for him, because I realized that without even attempting to try and live up to him at this point in my life, I had done that by not trying to do it. I was just doing what I had to do myself, which was raising my sons, starting my own business, getting all that in place. So I was busy in the doing of everything, and he was observing that. If I had tried to live up to him, his expectations, I never would have got there. So this is where we sabotage ourselves in a lot of ways, trying to be something for somebody else. I realized I've been in a lot of different relationships, divorced twice. In that, I was always trying to do things for the other person, trying to be what was expected. And I thought, hang on. Yes, always treat the other person with respect. Don't go into a relationship if you cannot respect the other person. If it's just lust, you're going to have problems. You need to be able to say, hey, can this person be somebody who can just be a friend as well? Can they be a friend as well as being a lover? If they can, then great, I can do that. And by being myself, I've got more chance of being successful, because the person who's going to gravitate to that is going to want that. If I'm trying to be something else, which is what I was most of my life, I sabotaged all my relationships because of that. I would probably have had different people in my relationships and probably been a lot happier.
Well, the accountability is what I am thinking. Accountability, looking at I can look at myself and say, and I have done it. Oh, Andrea, you got 7 children. You'll never get anywhere. And I've had people tell me that, you know what I'm saying? And then if I take it on, I can believe it. I probably stopped myself from a lot of things that I could have been further on, I tell myself. But you know what? You can't beat ourselves up. We have to just keep on pushing and change our mindset. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's how I thrive. That's how I rise above even the thoughts I can bring upon myself.
So if I look at it, if I'm talking to someone like yourself and talking about that, and I'd really like the people who are listening to this who may be going through similar things that you've gone through, like raising children and everything else. My thing when somebody says, oh, I haven't been really successful in my life, and I say, well, you've got 6 kids, 7 kids, whatever you've got. I go, how are those kids? What are they like today? How did they grow up? And you look at it and you go, my God, that's an incredible a job that you've actually done. That's extremely successful. How many people can say, I've got this many children and I'm really proud of them? See, one of the things with my 3 sons, I've got 6 grandkids now. And whenever I'm giving talks, people ask me about my sons, I joke about them when I say they're chalk and cheese, and I'm still trying to figure out number 3. But the other 2 are recording. But what I always say in every talk, when boys come up in the conversation, I've got 3 sons that I love and respect. and they're all different to each other. That's why I say chalk and cheese. It's the other one as well, because they're all different.
Come on, Alan.
They're all very proud of what they do. But sometimes they're not proud about themselves, but I always am. And in fact, my oldest boy came to me one day and he said, you've got to be more proud of my cousin. Now, his cousin's 15 days older than him, runs his own businesses and everything else. And I said, look, I respect you, I love you, and I'm proud of you. And he says, well, how can I be proud of you? I said, look, you may not have your own business, but I know that everything you do, you put yourself into. If you're working for somebody, you try and do the best job you have. I said, I couldn't care if you swept streets. I just expect your streets to be cleaner than everybody else's, and I know they will be. So I don't care what you're doing. I care about the person you have become. And if we all looked at being the person that we can become, then everything else falls into place. We're no longer now trying to live up to the Joneses. We're not trying to impress anybody. All we are doing is living our own life. And the people around us will be more attracted and impressed by that than us trying to do things to impress them. It's taken me, I'm in 70 now. It took me a long time, probably the first half of my life, which is 50 years. And I'm always saying that because I want to live to 100. I've still got a lot of things I want. Do you not think though, when people are saying all this, not only are they coming up with excuses, but their ego's trying to come out? Very much so. This is the thing. I also listen to my own dialect that's coming out and going, okay, how much of this is me trying to impress other people, or how much of it is I'm trying to impress upon other people of what they can actually do? I have no qualms or any problems to sit down and tell you all the stuff that I've done in my life, all the things that I really would have regretted having happened. But I know when I go through it, I can go through it in a way in which I have no shame for anything in my life. And in fact, people who say I'm feeling shame, I go, hang on, do you have the right to say that? They go, what are you talking about? Did you do the best that you could at that point? Did you deliberately, knowing all this other stuff, deliberately go and do something different? I said, for that you can be ashamed of. But if you did the best with what you had at the time, be proud of yourself. You can regret that, hey, I didn't have more information, because that's something external. But when you have shame, you're having shame for yourself. It's about the person. And do you have a right to put shame on yourself? And this is where a lot of the self-sabotage comes in. How many coaches out there are going, I'm going to work on the things you're ashamed of? If you've got a coach who says that, find a new coach, because that coach does not understand that shame only exists if you deliberately went out of your way to do the wrong thing.
Well, speaking of regret, I listened to Anthony Hopkins as well, and one video blew up to me. Basically, he's saying that because he was asked, like I'd be asked as well, do I have any regrets? And I went, I used to say yes, but thinking about it, I don't have regrets now, because technically we're not getting any younger. Well, I wish we were, but we're not. So we haven't got time for regrets. Yes, we've made mistakes in our life, but why should we let them mistakes impact us now and moving forward?
Well, see, everything that's happened in my life has made me who I am today.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I like who I am today. So I can look back at the situation at the time, regret that I did that happened at that time, because, well, if I look at my second divorce, woman I really loved, etc., and in good therapy. So, I can look at that and think, well, I would have liked to have been things to have happened differently, but then I wouldn't be where I am today. So I can regret it in that moment, but in the long term, not regret it at all.
Exactly.
I might regret something I said to somebody because I know how that may have impacted on them. But again, all these people who say, "Oh, you did such and such to me." Now, you may have if you throw a stone at somebody, yes, it's going to physically hurt them, etc. But as a profiler, I always talk about the fact that everybody has suffered or is suffering or has suffered. Everybody wears a mask. Everybody pretends they're not wearing a mask, including me. And everybody is a combination of all their childhood rewards and suffering. So in other words, we are the sum of all of our experiences, or more to the point, we are the sum of how we responded to all of our experiences. So when somebody said something, they did not do it to us. They said something, we chose them to take it a certain way. So I can look at that, and if I just respond emotionally in the moment, you're more than likely going to take it the wrong way. I'm going to then take it in a negative way. But if I go, where did that come from? Why did they say that? What's going on in their life at the moment? As I said, a bully goes and bullies others. And they do that because they're feeling so low, they need to lift themselves up. The only way they can lift themselves up, because they don't know how to lift themselves up, they've got to put other people down. And while they put somebody else down, all of a sudden they feel that they've actually lifted them. They haven't taken themselves anywhere. They're still in the same position, but they feel it. So if they're doing that, I go, why are they doing that? I can go up to somebody who's having a shot at me and say to them, look, I can appreciate something's going on here, and have a conversation with them, and all of a sudden turn them around in that conversation, because I tell them to guide them through those emotions. And then if they say to me, hey, you did this for me, I only did one thing for you. I set up the environment and nothing else. You then decide to make a difference in your life. And that's something you should be proud of. So straight away, they know that they've achieved something.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take their power away from them and saying, hey, I did this for you.
Right.
I sit down in the Campfire Project and have men and women come to me, sit down and tell me their stories they've never told anyone in the past. I'll ask them the first question, which is, okay, if this is where you are today, how did you get there? Tell us your journey. They start talking, and as they're talking, I then say to them, okay, I'll listen to them all the way through, and then I'll ask them a little bit at the tail end. If they're talking, they might talk for 45 minutes, and I won't say a word. And they, at the end of the conversation, they go, when I say conversation, me talk to the front, and at the end, and that's about it. But they'll say, my God, I've never done that before in my life. I feel so good. And I go, well, they say, well, what does that feel like? And they say, well, it's the best therapy I've ever had. And I went, well, if you want to thank the therapist, they go, yes. And I said, well, get off the call, go look in the mirror and say thank you. Because in that, all I've done is set up an environment where you're being able to start talking. And as you started talking, your conscious mind started listening to your unconscious mind. That's what's going on. Their unconscious mind's talking to their conscious mind at that point, and they get solutions. All I did was set up a safe place and just facilitated that. I did not change them. If I thought that I had, and all these coaches say, "Oh yes, I do all this," I help make these people this way and everything else. Move away from them. It's not about being humble to the point. I live by three things: love, humility, and respect. Humility, you can still have pride in yourself. It's not like, okay, put yourself down. But I never lift myself up by putting other people down. If I'm going to try and lift myself up, I lift those up around me and stay with them. In business, I lift my competition up and talk about all the great things that they do, and then I show my point of difference. So I'm now standing on their shoulders. But I've lifted them up, I just stand on their shoulders. If I put them down, and then I'm standing on their shoulders, they're in the gutter, I'm still in the gutter. And it's the same thing when it comes to dealing with people. The more that we can look at them, understand them. I had a situation with a guy who runs a network, and he got upset with me. He sent a long email through to me, and I don't discuss things on email. I sent him a message back and said, pick up the phone, let's have a chat. And he didn't. And I then saw him at another point. Somebody said to me, oh, he's been bad-mouthing you and everything else. And I went, they said, well, what do you think of him? I said, well, he's got a good heart. I can see what he's trying to do. I appreciate all of that. I also know he's going through a lot of tough times. And I know his reaction to me wasn't from what I said. It was a build-up of everything else. And people said, that's very forgiving. I said, it's not forgiving. It's a fact of understanding. I don't have to forgive him for anything because I understand him. And therefore, there is nothing there that I feel that I have to get some reprisal, a change situation. I just need to understand. And in that, I don't take any emotions on.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
If we do that,
I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
yeah. If we do that, we actually take the pressure off ourselves as well. And that's the whole thing. This is how I deal with those sort of things. This is why I don't take those pressures on. I don't self-sabotage anymore. Every now and then I might get a bit of a niggle. It's because, and I stop and go, oh, that's one of my old patterns starting to come back in. And I can then change that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only person I can change is me.
Absolutely. And that's what I say to my 9-year-old daughter all the time, because she is forever whinging about her older brother. And I know she's going to whinge about a younger brother when he arrives in August or possibly September. And when she's carrying it on, I sit down to her and I said, right, Tegan, he may have annoyed you, but with you carrying it on, yes, he's annoyed you, but the more you're doing this, you're more just going to be peed off with yourself rather than him. And it gets her to think.
Yeah, because that's angry with somebody else and, whinging and complaining about them. That's like taking poison and hoping the other person will die. It doesn't happen.
No.
Yeah, I like that one. That's one of my favorites right there. Sorry.
She's feeling that one.
Yeah, I felt that.
And that's, as I said, I can respond in certain ways. I choose to respond the way I respond. If that ends up being negative, then that's my problem, not the other person's. If it's positive, then hey, that makes me feel better. And by the way, anybody who's thinking I've done all wrong in the past and everything else, well, that's a decision as well to say, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore, and let the other go, because now you've got new information. If anybody hears anything we've said today and that impacts on their life in a positive way, they look at okay, this is why I could be in a better situation if I'd been like this. Well, it's not about being in a better position if you had this information before. You have it now. This is your starting point. So you take what you've got now and you step forward from here. The past is just there to remind us not to go back and do those things again. As they say, the past is past, the future is the future, and the present is now, is a present, and that's a gift. So now's where we start with everything. We go, okay, because as I said, the first 50 years of my life, I was doing all the wrong things. I was chasing relationships. It was when things started to happen in my life, I had to take different steps. But my complete life changed. For the first half was chasing relationships and had none. Now, from 50 years on, the age of 50 onwards, it's been a case of helping other people create their relationships, understand themselves and everything else. And while I was doing that, I've got that many relationships around me and support. And I didn't go out to achieve that. When you understand other people, you're forgiving yourself in that process. You go, right, just letting things go. But it's in the doing of letting go. You can say to somebody, you've got to let that go. Well, don't tell them that unless you've got some ideas on how they can do it. If I'm working with somebody, I can, because I've been through a lot of things myself, I can say, I know how you feel because I felt the same way, but this is what I found. If somebody says to me, I've got this going on in my life and I haven't been through that myself, then it's a case of, well, I haven't been through that myself, but I've got an idea, would this work? Because I'm now asking a question of that person. And they can then think about, that might work. I might try that. Well, how would you try it? If you were going to do that, what would you actually do? So we're having a discussion, and there's nowhere that I'm standing above them saying, this is what you should do because I'm the expert. And when I'm talking about, well, this is what I've been through, but this is what I found, and this is how I came to the answer. And then I'll even ask them, is that something you might be able to try for yourself? In nowhere in there have I come across as superior. I'm just the person who went through that door first. That's it. And people who then try to big note themselves by saying, I do all this for people, and they haven't dealt with their own stuff. And they're probably not the person to be dealing with. It's being humility, not being somebody who puts themselves down, but having some humility when you're talking to other people. I'm never the expert. When you used the word expert earlier on, I know you said, dare I use the word expert because you know what I'm like. I like to be an authority. I like to be a trusted authority. But don't ever call me an expert. You put two experts in the same room, they won't agree.
No.
Put a third one in the room, and there's more disagreement. And so the more experts you have, the less true knowledge you actually have. But if you have authority, they will talk about the same thing. There'll be agreement. And the discussions they have will be when there is a slight disagreement. How do I take it and how do we find the truth? How do we work together? Experts argue. Authorities work together. And they work with the people around them with humility with the people they work with. When you do that, your emotions are a hell of a lot different. A lot more gentle.
Well, anything, Andrea?
I'm sitting here taking notes, and listening, and it's really been a great show to sit here, and it helps us to reflect on, like Adam talked about ego. Well, we have to understand there's more than one ego state that we can be in. It's there's several, I know a few: parent ego state, child ego state, adult ego state. And if you're in your child ego state, well, you need some development, I would think. Because, a child's ego state is more, when they first come in the world, me, mine, and they learn no very well. So we have to be careful and think mindfully of how we are going to respond. So it helps me to know that I'm on to something, that I'm on the right track. So thank you, Alan, for helping me to see, you too, Adam, helping me to see in my own self, and how to move forward differently.
Yeah, well, obviously, if people are still entrapped in that child ego, I'm so Papa Smurf here can give them a lesson.
Yep, and that's the nickname they gave me, Papa Smurf.
Yes.
Papa Smurf.
Well, Andrea, who have we got next week?
Who do we have next week? I got my little list sitting here with me. I try to keep on top of that. Next week, we have my wonderful sister, Roylynn. Roylynn
we're talking about fibro. Talking about fibro.
Yes. She's talking about fibromyalgia and healing. She's been healing herself.
Awesome.
Well, along with, her doctor's care and things like that, of course, but she takes the initiative to do what's necessary to do self-care. And she likes plant-based.
Wow. Anyway, thanks, Alan, for this.
You're welcome.
Even though we've hardly spoke, but we love it.
Yes, we do. We do.
Yeah.
We got to have you again. You thought we was going to have a big discussion with everybody, a bunch of people. You was wondering about that earlier, so maybe we'll have to have you back for a big old discussion.
Sounds like the plan.
Well, we are though, because in June or July, we've got a men's mental health panel. And Alan's been invited.
Okay, I see that on our schedule. Okay, Alan.
A men's mental health panel.
I can't wait for that one either.
Oh yeah, we've got a few people in there. I think we've got about 6 people in total.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's what's up. Yeah. You're on it, bro. You'll always be on it. Look.
Right, I'm gonna go. So thanks all, and thanks Alan, and please don't get me back like 6 a.m. I don't know, my time to come on campfire.
Yes, take care of yourself.
Will do. Thank you.
Right, see you later.
Bye for now.
Later.